Good morning, John Zogby.
Hey, good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. What's your take on the current field? And by the way, who's the guy that just got in?
Cornwell.
Tom Steyer.
Steyer.
Yeah,
Steyer.
He had been in and acting like a candidate, then dropped out. Now he's back in again.
Well, and he's been acting. He's been the one that's been funding and delivering this impeachment message for quite some time, right?
Yeah, pretty much liberal. Pro-environment, but his number one issue is going to be impeachment. And he wants to use, I suppose, the forums of the debates to get that word out.
What's your? I'd like your take on the field. There are a ton of them, of course. What's your take?
Well, Biden was damaged after the first debate. Kamala Harris really rose to the forefront. I think she opened a very dangerous door and a dangerous path for Democrats, maybe a little too soon. Good strategy for her in the short run to go after Biden, but perhaps just a little too soon.
Yeah.
The guns are going to be focused on her now, and that, in the final analysis, doesn't help the party. But right now, I think what you're talking about are five candidates actually that pretty much dominate the field. Of course, Biden and Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren in that order. Bernie Sanders appears to be declining, but he's got so much money and probably at least as far as we know, the best field game of any of the candidates. And then there is the young mayor from Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, who at the very least, we have a term, the Bruce Babbitt of the race, kind of the conscience, the kind of fellow who speaks the truth to power, and is very compelling. He may either prove to be kind of like the of the party as the debates get more heated, or he may have legs and rise up starting in Iowa.
I just can't help but think right now it looks like none of these people could beat Trump, yet the polls say something much different.
Yeah, they do. In fact, of those five right now, four of them beat Trump in the more recent polls.
Yeah.
Some, like Biden, by 9, 10, 11 points. The others, 5 to 7 points. But that's today, and they're getting a lot of focus without the Democratic candidates without having been scrutinized or beaten up. Trump, of course, has going for him the economy, the solid base that he has, and then the fact that you just don't know if the Democrats are going to beat each other up to the point where they neutralize their candidate when the candidate finally wins the nomination.
Boy, it seems like they're willing to do that. I mean, just the stuff that's been brought out against Biden has been pretty rancid. So they're willing to attack. There's no doubt.
Yeah, they are, and that's a long tradition in the party, and it starts with the progressives versus the mainstream, which at times have cost the Democratic nominee in the last 50 years, have cost the nominee the presidency. I think the additional element that we won't see until later on will be the identity politics splitting the party as well. So if you have a white man rising to the top, well, who's going to be the running mate? It has to be a woman. It has to be non-white. It has to be LGBTQ. It has to be Latino. And those are the sorts of things that can tear the party apart.
Andrew.
One quick question / comment, I guess. The Iowa caucuses are February 3rd. It's July 10th. We had one candidate, Eric Swalwell, drop out of the race, but then with Tom Steyer getting in it, brought it back to the same number. What do you think numbers-wise we're looking at come February 3rd? How many candidates really do you expect to be still in the hunt for that first caucus?
8 or 9 at most, probably 6. You know, what normally happens is that you start to get the beauty contests. So by the end of the summer, they have the Iowa straw poll. Maybe not as important as it used to be, but that's where it's at the state fair, and people cast a paper ballot. But it's generally considered important because a candidate who's been running around and spending a lot of money and raising a lot of money and ends up in 6th place or 9th place, or even a disappointing 4th place, decides, it's time to drop out, or the press decides not to cover that candidate anymore. So the winnowing out will certainly take place before February 3rd.
Banansky.
And will we see, John, in your opinion, is this realistic or is this conspiracy? When you have so many candidates, they're kind of stabbing at each other, and there's a bad part of that. But we'll see allegiances where, like, let's say a Kamala Harris or a Joe Biden tells Bill de Blasio, hey, I don't really know what my position is on this at this point. Why don't you take these 2 issues, run out there with this idea, see
test
what the reaction.
Waters.
Test the waters on things. Or is that not really everyone's still fighting for themselves?
Jeff, you're on to something. There are stalking horses, to be sure. Frankly, this is how cabinets are formed later on down the road. So there is plenty of evidence that this sort of shilling, let's say,
sure.
Several years ago, John McCain, 2008, had Fred Thompson in the race. They were as close as 2 senators could possibly be, and Fred Thompson was there siphoning off votes from some of the more conservative supporters who would have voted for a Mike Huckabee, split that opposition vote so that McCain could win in South Carolina. So, it does happen indeed.
Do you see anybody right now? I mean, if you were to make a prediction today, and boy, political predictions today just seem so difficult. But if you were to say if there's one that's going to kind of float to the top, and that's going to be your candidate, think about it. Nobody knew Obama's name. Everybody thought Hillary was the candidate even back then. So who do you think?
Way too soon.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to think that after all these years, Joe Biden finds his sea legs and gets back in. Well, he is in. He's leading by 10 points or more. Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, I think, are very, very interesting candidates, and they have the potential to go all the way. This could indeed be the year of the woman. But there's so much sparring that has to take place, so much money being spent. And then if you've ever spent time in a primary state or a battleground state right before the election when millions of dollars are spent, really anything can happen. I think it's going to be a very competitive race. We're not going to have a nominee on February 3rd, that's for sure.
The big difference, I think, between the GOP primary when Trump got the nomination was it seemed like every single one of those candidates against Trump, whereas here it's not like that. There's people that like each other. But everybody in 2015 or 2016 hated Trump and were after him. So it was Trump versus the rest of the candidates.
Well, it's Trump versus the rest of the candidates again.
Here, too,
Just they're Democrats, not Republicans, right?
Yeah, and that's got to be a consideration. Who do you want to see on the stage against Donald Trump? As far as the first debate is concerned, Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, I think, were the big winners. They showed that they could probably go eyeball to eyeball with Trump. But I'll tell you, there are lesser candidates that are very intriguing. Tulsi Gabbard, I don't know what kind of campaign she can run, but she has a very unique set of positions, particularly on foreign policy. And, if she has any sort of ground game at all out there, you might see her name in the mix.
Well, I would think the Democrats are looking for someone also. I mean, it might be Biden, but also looking for someone that rises to the top out of nowhere like an Obama, which created a movement. And part of that movement was because, obviously, he was African-American. So this was a stellar moment for American history. I wonder if that, and believe me, that was the same with a woman, with Hillary, but Hillary was not that candidate. And so I'm wondering if, Democrats have learned their lesson, because, again, they felt the only way they could win was with Hillary, and that ultimately the vote didn't come out for her.
No, it's wide open right now. You do have to watch Kamala Harris, and the schedule enables her, although I think she raised the ante a bit. The book on her was that, look, if she could just get into the mix, the top 3 in Iowa, top 2 in New Hampshire, then win with the power of the African-American vote in South Carolina. The week after that is California, which is hers and is delegate rich, and then she goes on to the nomination.
Yeah.
Having the kind of performance that she had in the debate raised the expectations to the point where I think she's going to have to win Iowa and win New Hampshire. Now, that's a much tougher order for her.
Good stuff. It's going to, and here we are in July. July before a November election, which is before the November election.
Yeah.
So we have a long ways to go, and you're right.
Long way to go.
No picking yet. There's way too much time in between now and then. So
yeah, there really is.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. John Zogby, as always, we appreciate your time.
Good to talk to you.
All right, thanks so much. John Zogby, Zogby Strategies.